My beloved child. There is a reason your heart feels unusually still at this moment, as though it has been waiting for words it could not find on its own. Before another day passes, before another choice quietly settles into place, you need to hear something that has been growing in silence for far longer than you realize. Someone you have carried in your thoughts has reached a place where waiting no longer feels easy. They have stood at the edge of uncertainty, asking themselves questions they never imagined they would have to ask. Yet the answer they continue searching for has always led them back to one place, the memory of what your presence awakened inside them. If you have ever wondered whether your quiet prayers disappeared into empty space, they did not. If you have ever questioned whether your patience had meaning, it did. And if you have spent nights convincing yourself that perhaps your story had already reached its ending, there is something you have not seen yet. Because while you believed nothing was changing, unseen moments were quietly rearranging the path ahead. Picture a quiet evening. A room filled with gentle silence. The kind of silence where every ticking second feels louder than the last. Your person sat there without distractions, surrounded not by noise, but by memories they could no longer ignore. Some were joyful. Others carried the weight of regret. But one memory returned again and again with surprising clarity. It was not an extraordinary moment. It was something simple. A conversation. A smile offered without expecting anything in return. A kindness that seemed ordinary at the time. Yet now, looking back, they understood that those small moments revealed something they had overlooked before. Not perfection. Not fantasy. But peace. That realization unsettled them in the gentlest way. Because peace is often recognized only after it has been missing. Perhaps you know that feeling. Perhaps you have spent years giving more understanding than you received. Perhaps you learned to carry disappointment quietly so others would not have to carry your pain. If this sounds familiar, then allow yourself to hear this truth. The strength you believed no one noticed has never been wasted. Every act of grace. Every prayer whispered through tears. Every decision to remain kind when bitterness seemed easier. Those moments became part of the person you are today. And sometimes, it is only after distance that another heart begins to recognize their true value. But that was not the moment that changed everything. Something else happened. A conversation took place that your person never expected. It was not dramatic. There were no raised voices. Only honest words spoken more slowly than usual. Questions were asked. Old assumptions were challenged. Someone close to them gently pointed out something they had refused to admit for a very long time. At first, they resisted. After all, accepting the truth often requires letting go of pride. Yet the words remained with them long after the conversation ended. Later that night, they found themselves sitting alone once again. No distractions. No opinions from others. Only their own thoughts. For the first time in a long while, they stopped asking what was easiest. And began asking what was right. That single change in perspective quietly opened a door that had remained closed for far too long. Still, they have not made their final decision. Not yet. Because one final realization must come before their heart is ready to move forward. And what they discovered next was hidden in something so ordinary, that almost everyone else would have overlooked it. Yet what happened next was never meant to be revealed. Until now. The quiet discovery did not happen in a grand moment. There were no dramatic announcements. No perfectly timed signs. Instead, it arrived the way many important truths do, softly. The following morning carried an unusual stillness. As your person moved through familiar routines, something felt different. It was not the world around them that had changed. It was the way they had begun to see it. For so long, they had measured life by what they could control. Plans, expectations, and carefully guarded emotions had shaped every decision. Yet now they found themselves reflecting on something they had avoided for months, perhaps even years. What if I have been protecting myself from the very peace I've been searching for? That question stayed with them. It followed them through ordinary moments. While driving. While preparing a meal. While sitting quietly with a cup of coffee as the evening light faded beyond the window. Some questions refuse to leave because they carry the beginning of an answer. If you have ever experienced a season where your heart seemed caught between hope and surrender, you understand this feeling. You know what it is like to keep moving forward while quietly wondering whether anyone truly sees the love you have continued to carry. Your perseverance has not gone unnoticed. The compassion you offered when it would have been easier to become distant. The forgiveness you chose, even when no apology arrived. The faith that remained alive despite unanswered prayers. These are not forgotten chapters. They are part of a story still being written. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Someone unexpectedly spoke your name. Not in criticism. Not in passing. But with genuine respect. It happened during an ordinary conversation among people your person trusted. The discussion began with everyday matters before slowly turning toward relationships, family, and the choices that shape a lifetime. One thoughtful voice quietly asked a question. Who has consistently brought peace into your life? The room fell silent. Your person did not answer immediately. Instead, they looked down for a moment, as though searching through memories they had not visited in a long time. Faces came and went in their thoughts. Conversations replayed. Moments of joy. Moments of misunderstanding. Moments they wished they could revisit with greater wisdom. Again and again, one image remained. Not because it demanded attention. Because it offered comfort. Sometimes the heart recognizes home before the mind is ready to admit it. If this resonates with your own journey, hold on to that thought. There are seasons when silence is not rejection. It is preparation. Growth often happens where no one can see it. The strongest roots develop beneath the surface long before anyone notices new branches reaching toward the light. Your story may have felt delayed. But delay is not always denial. There are moments when time quietly prepares two people to meet with greater understanding than they possessed before. As evening approached, your person made a choice that surprised even them. They stopped listening to every outside opinion. For the first time in a long while, they decided to listen to the quiet voice within, the one that had been gently reminding them of kindness, honesty, and the peace they always felt whenever thoughts of you appeared. That decision brought unexpected clarity. But clarity also brought responsibility. Because once someone recognizes what truly matters, they must decide whether they will have the courage to act on it. And that is exactly where your person now stands. One final conversation still remains. A conversation that could influence everything that follows. It is not the words themselves that matter most. It is who chooses to speak them first. And when those first few sentences are finally spoken, a truth that has remained hidden until now will begin to change everything. The evening arrived with a quiet kind of anticipation. Not the anticipation that comes from knowing exactly what will happen, but the kind that gently settles over a heart when it senses that something meaningful is drawing near. Your person had replayed countless conversations in their mind before this one. Some ended with words they wished they had spoken. Others with silence they wished they had broken. But this conversation felt different from the beginning. It was not about proving anyone right. It was not about revisiting every disappointment. It was about finding clarity. The person sitting across from them noticed the hesitation almost immediately. Instead of rushing the moment, they simply waited. Sometimes the greatest gift another person can offer is the patience to let someone speak honestly. For several long moments, only quiet filled the room. Then your person finally admitted something they had never said aloud. I've been afraid of making the wrong choice. Those words carried more weight than anyone present realized. Because beneath them lived months of uncertainty. questions left unanswered, and emotions carefully hidden behind strength. The response they received was calm. "You don't have to choose a life without fear," the other person said softly. "You only have to choose the path that brings you the deepest sense of peace." Those words lingered. Not because they were dramatic. Because they were true. If you have spent years carrying responsibilities, putting others first, or quietly hoping that love could become something steady instead of uncertain, then perhaps you understand why that sentence mattered so much. Peace rarely shouts. It whispers. And only a heart willing to become still can truly hear it. As the conversation continued, something unexpected happened. Your person stopped speaking about circumstances and began speaking about you. Not about grand gestures. Not about impossible dreams. But about the small things that had remained unforgettable. The way you listened without judgment. The calm you brought into difficult moments. The quiet encouragement you offered without expecting recognition. The respect you showed, even when life became complicated. It was those ordinary moments that now felt extraordinary. Sometimes we search for signs in remarkable places while overlooking the quiet evidence that has been surrounding us all along. If this sounds familiar, remember this. The goodness you give to others often leaves an imprint long after the moment has passed. Kindness has a remarkable way of returning when it is needed most. But that was not the moment that changed everything. As the conversation came to an end, the other person asked one final question. It was so simple that it almost seemed unimportant. "When you imagine the years ahead, whose presence brings you peace rather than pressure?" The room became still again. This time, the silence carried no confusion. Only recognition. Your person didn't answer immediately. They didn't need to. Sometimes the heart speaks before the lips ever move. They lowered their eyes, smiled ever so slightly, and for the first time in a very long while, the uncertainty that had clouded their thoughts began to lift. It was not because every obstacle had disappeared. It was because they finally understood that lasting relationships are not built on perfect timing. They are built on honesty, patience, grace, and the courage to value what has quietly remained constant. If this message resonates with you, take a moment to reflect on the quiet strength that has carried you this far. Every season has shaped you. Every disappointment has taught you compassion. Every unanswered prayer has deepened your faith in ways you may not fully see yet. Nothing has been wasted. Yet even with this new understanding, one important step remains unfinished. Later that night, after everyone else had gone home and the lights around them had grown dim, your person reached for something they had not looked at in a very long time. What they found there brought back one memory with remarkable clarity. A memory connected to you. And hidden within that memory was one detail they had completely overlooked before. That forgotten detail is about to influence the final decision they have been struggling to make. But what they discovered in that quiet moment cannot be understood until the next chapter unfolds. The memory returned with surprising clarity. It was not tied to a special occasion or a life-changing celebration. It was an ordinary day. The kind of day most people would eventually forget. Yet as your person sat quietly, that simple moment came back with remarkable detail. The sound of gentle laughter. A pause in the conversation. The feeling of being completely understood without needing to explain every thought. Only now did they recognize why that memory had remained untouched by time. It was the last time they felt completely at peace. There had been no pressure. No need to impress. No fear of being misunderstood. Just two hearts sharing a moment that felt safe. Sometimes we only recognize the value of peace after life has become noisy. If you have ever looked back and realized that the moments you treasured most were often the simplest, then you already understand this truth. The greatest blessings rarely announce themselves. They quietly become unforgettable. As these memories unfolded, your person noticed something else. For every joyful memory, there had also been a misunderstanding. Not one caused by a lack of care, but by fear. Fear of vulnerability. Fear of rejection. Fear of believing in something that mattered deeply enough to change a life. How often has fear disguised itself as caution? How often has silence pretended to be strength? These questions settled gently into their heart, asking for honest answers instead of quick ones. And for the first time, they did not run from those answers. Instead, they allowed themselves to see the past with compassion rather than regret. That shift changed everything inside them. Because regret often keeps us looking backward. Grace gives us the courage to move forward. If this feels close to your own experience, remember this. Your seasons of waiting have shaped more than your circumstances. They have shaped your character. The kindness you continued to offer when life felt unfair. The patience you practiced when answers were slow to come. The quiet faith you carried through lonely evenings. Those moments have become part of your strength. Nothing sincere is ever wasted. Not love offered with honesty. Not forgiveness given freely. Not hope held onto through difficult seasons. As midnight approached, your person did something they had been avoiding for a long time. They opened a small box tucked away where forgotten keepsakes had rested undisturbed. Inside were ordinary reminders of meaningful days. A handwritten note. A photograph. A small keepsake that seemed insignificant to anyone else. Yet each one carried a story. And with every story came another realization. They had spent so much time remembering the painful moments that they had almost forgotten how many beautiful ones had existed. It is easy for disappointment to become louder than gratitude. But gratitude has a quiet way of restoring perspective. Then something unexpected happened. Folded carefully between old papers was a message. Not a dramatic declaration. Not an extraordinary promise. Just a few sincere words written long ago. Words that spoke of encouragement, respect, and hope for better days ahead. Reading them now, your person felt something they had not experienced in a very long time. Not certainty. Not excitement. Trust. A quiet confidence that genuine care does not disappear simply because time has passed. But that was not the moment that changed everything. As they carefully placed the message back where they had found it, something slipped from between its pages and drifted gently to the floor. At first glance, it seemed completely ordinary. Almost too ordinary to notice. Yet when they picked it up and looked more closely, they realized it contained one forgotten detail. A detail connected to a promise that neither of you may have realized was ever made. And once that promise came back into focus, the final decision they have been wrestling with could no longer be delayed. What that forgotten promise revealed, is where everything begins to change. The small piece of paper rested quietly in their hands. For a long moment, your person simply looked at it. Not because it held extraordinary words, but because it awakened an extraordinary memory. Sometimes, what changes a life is not a promise spoken with great emotion. It is a quiet commitment made without realizing how deeply it would take root. As they read it again, they remembered the season in which those words had first been written. Life had felt uncertain. Both of you were carrying responsibilities that few people fully understood. There were expectations from others. Questions without clear answers. Dreams that seemed farther away than either of you wanted to admit. Yet even in that season, one thing had remained constant. Respect. That realization settled gently into their heart. Feelings can rise and fall with circumstances. Opinions can change. Fear can cloud judgment. But genuine respect has a way of enduring through every season. It becomes the quiet foundation upon which lasting relationships are built. If you have ever wondered whether your steady kindness mattered, hear this with confidence. People may forget exact conversations. They may forget dates and details. But they rarely forget how someone consistently made them feel. Your calm presence. Your willingness to listen. Your grace during difficult moments. Those memories have remained alive in ways you could never have measured. And this is where the story takes another unexpected turn. Later that week, your person found themselves in the company of someone whose wisdom had guided them through many important decisions. The conversation was unhurried. No one was trying to persuade them. Instead, thoughtful questions invited honest reflection. What kind of future do you truly want? The answer did not come immediately. Instead, another question quietly formed inside their heart. Who brings out the person I most hope to become? That question changed everything. Because for the first time, they were no longer thinking only about comfort. They were thinking about character. About shared values. About the quiet strength that carries two people through ordinary days, not just extraordinary moments. As evening settled in, they took a slow walk beneath the fading light. The air was still. The world seemed unusually quiet. In that silence, they realized something they had overlooked for far too long. Love is not only found in grand declarations. It is revealed in consistency. In showing up. In patience. In choosing understanding when misunderstanding would be easier. If this message resonates with you, remember this truth. The seasons that felt slow were not empty. They were preparing your heart with wisdom that cannot be rushed. Every disappointment taught discernment. Every unanswered prayer strengthened perseverance. Every quiet act of faith became part of the person you are today. Nothing beautiful grows overnight. The strongest trees spend years developing roots that no one applauds. Yet those hidden roots are what allow them to stand through every storm. Your journey has been much the same. Then, just as your person prepared to return home, something entirely unexpected caught their attention. Across the room was someone they had not seen in quite some time. A familiar face. Someone who knew pieces of your shared story that few others ever understood. A warm greeting led to a conversation neither of them had planned. Old memories surfaced naturally. They laughed about moments that once seemed ordinary but now felt deeply meaningful. Then the conversation grew quieter. The familiar face looked at your person with gentle sincerity and said, "There's something I've wanted to tell you for a long time." Your person's smile faded into thoughtful silence. Because something in those words felt different. Not dramatic. Not alarming. Simply important. The next few sentences would uncover a truth that had remained hidden through every misunderstanding, every delay, and every unanswered question. And once those words were spoken, your person's final decision would never be viewed the same way again. But that truth has waited until this very moment to be revealed.